Today's daf is daf nun vav, and we're going to start on the second line, which quotes the Mishnah. And this Mishnah is back on daf nun gimel amid beis habal yevinto b'bia grua kikon shogeg meizid onus v'rotzon echad ama'ara v'echad gomer kana. His kana is Yevamot. Lamai kana. In these inferior kind of bios, to what extent is he kana? Rav Omar kana lakol. Even though it's a bia grua, she's ki'ishto l'chol dav. She has all the dinim of an isha nesua, even for achilas truma if he's a kohen. Ushmuel Omar, in the case of bia grua, lo kana el l'dvarim amurim b'parsha. Only for that which is written, in the parsha of Yibum. And what's written in the parsha of Yibum? Leirash b'nichsei ach. The din is that the Yavam stands in the place of his brother to inherit his portion. So if there are two other brothers, he'll get two portions. He'll get his portion and the portion of his late brother. And once he has a bia grua, he was kona the Yevama, such that he's yorish es chelik achiv hames. Number two, what else does a bia grua accomplish according to Shmuel? Lefotra min hayibum. That from now on she doesn't need yibum. So let's say the Yavam dies after this bia grua, and velo banim isha cheres, he has children from a different wife. Yishuv eina tzricha yibum. Why? Because now she's considered through this yibum to be already an isha, an isha's each. Okay, then. So that itself is lepotra min hayibum shayivama yavo shebaleha. A Yavam be a grua and if teres bekach min hayibum. Now it says here the Ella he muteresli nase l'shuk. Right, so she doesn't need yibum and muteresli nase b'shuk. V'chein bo hayavam lo tzia mershuso acher shebo le'bia zu v'ri megarsha beget v'einu tzricha chalita. So there's no need for chalitza because this bia is enough to take her into his rishus and to be motzi of rishus. All he needs to do is give her a get. And the tzaros of this Yevama up through min hayibum through bia gemura. However, eino chels b'truma, the eino ve'eno yoshav v'lo metami lo ve'eno meifir nidareha. And that's called lo kona el dvar amur b'parsha, and that is lirash b'nichsei achiv. But eino chelis b'truma. So according to Rav, we said kana would be a gemura lakol even lechol b'truma. She has a full-fledged din of an Asua. According to Shmuel, on the other hand, she cannot eat B'Truma. He doesn't inherit her, and he doesn't bury her if he's a Kohen, and he doesn't have the koach to be made for Nidare. Minan Isu, and the Gemara says, if this Yevamot was already married to the late brother, and of course he was a Kohen and she was already eating Truma, and now her husband dies, and she stops eating Truma, everybody agrees that now the Yevamot can eat Truma, even be a Grua, the Havis, she was already, during the lifetime of her husband, in the case of this, already eating Truma. She has like a chazaka that gives her the rights to eat. So we don't need the Yavam to add more than what her previous husband, meaning his late brother, gave her the rights to eat Truma. Kipligi, what is the battlefield, the point of contention? Kipligi Ravu Shmuel, that's a case of Mina Eris. So she wasn't eating Truma, the base Baila. And now her husband dies, and the Yavam implements a via Grua. Rav Amar Ocheles, she can eat Truma. The Rabbi Rachmana Bias Shogeg Mezid. Rava holds that Shogeg is Kona in the Yevama, just like Mezid is Kona. And if that be the case, Rav says it's like a Bia Gemura, and therefore she can eat Truma. She's Ishtok L'chol Davar. That's even in the case of Bia Shogeg. Shmuel Amar Ki Rabbi Rachmana, when the Torah says that Bia Gemura is considered Bia, that's La'okmei Bimkom Ba. That now he, the Yavam, stands in the place of the Baal. He enters into the shoes of the Baal. And that means, as we said before, he's Yorish her. And if she was eating Truma already, B'chai Baila, then she could eat Truma in the Yavam's house. But La'lume Mi Baal Lo. That the Yavam, whose Baal Bia Gemura, should be stronger than the Baal, and that now Takta could eat when she was married, she couldn't eat. Lo. That's Shmuel sheet against Rav. Because the Shmuel itamei, and Shmuel holds a big Grua, I keep saying Gemura, I'm just saying Grua, is not Machil the Yevama Arusa B'Truma L'Taimei. He is consistent with the sheet of Amr Yochanan, Amr Nachman, Amr Shmuel Abal, Machil, Kol Shabal, if the coin is Machil B'Truma, meaning if she were a Nesua, so she's is Yavam Machil. Yavam likewise could be Machil Truma, even if Baal Leo be a Gemura. V'chol she'ena Baal Machil. Like, for example, if she was an Arusa, and Arusa doesn't eat the Truma, is Yavam Eno Machil. Yavam cannot be the catalyst to transfer to her or imbue her with the schus of eating Truma, because he was Baal Lev be a Gemura. And that Shmuel, she doesn't. Now the Gemara quotes a brayso Ashan Shmuel Meisvei. We have a brayso that says Bas Yisrael Pikachas, meaning she's a Bas Das. Shenis Arsa L'Kohen Pikeach, he's a Bar Das, so she and he are both Bari Das. Flo hispik l'kon, so he didn't take her to the chup to clinch the nesuin adshin is charish. He loses his das because he became deaf. So at the time of the nesuin, he's a charish and he's not considered bar das, and his kinyan is not a kinyan. Eina olchel, she cannot eat truma. She's not considered a nesua. So this is after Eris. Mace, if her husband who's deaf dies after he took her into a chuppah, into nesua, v'nafla lifnei hayava cheresh, uba lea v'hayavam olcheles b'truma. In other words, you don't need das for bias yibum. She's knuya liyavam. She's ishta gemura. She eats truma. Ubazo yafa kocha yavam mikocha baal. Which means if the baal was a cheresh, she cannot be machil her truma. And yet, paradoxically, when the yavam is a cheresh, she's machil her truma. So Gemara asks Bishlei Rav, he holds that even the Yevamot mina irisin, that she never had rights to eat truma. Nevertheless, she eats truma under the Yavam nicha. So even the Brisa supports Rav that even though lo ochla truma v'chai baila acherish, aval became ocheles b'truma tachas Yevamot hacherish. The afshem lo be a grua sharei ein bo das. So according to Rav, who holds that Yevamot Irisin eats truma tachas hayavam even through a bia grua, then this brisa makes a lot of sense. That even though the brisa says she did not eat truma tachas baila hacheresh, nevertheless she eats truma tachas Yevamot hacheresh. Yevamot meaning her yavam. Even though he wasn't baaled to be a guru, he doesn't have das. El Shmuel, who holds that if she didn't eat truma until now, meaning tachas baila, she doesn't eat truma tachas hayavam. To be a grua is kasha. The Brisa says she can eat truma tachas yavam acheresh, which is a bia grua, even though she never ate truma until this point. Amalei Shmuel ema hachi. This is the way I would interpret the Brisa. Basi shopi kashin it's arsol lekohen shopi keach lo hispik hakon lekons adshin is charesh. Right? Between the Erison and the Nisuin, he became a cheresh, and means he's no longer ben das. He's ein ocheles b'truma. Since at the time of Nisuin, he's not a bar das, and his kinyan is not a kinyan. She's not considered a nesua. She cannot eat truma. But kanas, the achakach nischash, if after the Nisuin, after the chuppah, he became a cheresh. So at the moment of Nisuin, he was a bar das, and if his kinyan is chal, she's his full-fledged wife. Ifa gemura is therefore ocheles. She can eat truma. But if he mace baila hacheresh shekonsa kshupikeach v'nafla lifnei hayavam cheresh ocheles. In other words, since b'chai baila she was already eating truma, even though the bias hacheresh is certainly a bia grua, nevertheless he's kona the Yevamot. She becomes ishto l'chol davar, because in the nefilas yibum min nesuin, Shmuel is modeh that since she already ate truma under the Baal, she can eat truma under the Yavam, even though the Yavam is Bala but be a Gemura. So there's no kasha from the Brisa on Shmuel. The Gemara tries to clarify now, my bezo, right? It says bezo yofa kocha yov mikocha Baal. What is the kocha yavam yofa mikocha Baal? Because the Baal himself is machil hatruma, even though he's a cheresh. The ilu lebal cheresh meikara lo cheles ilu yavam cheresh meikara ochla. So if the Baal married her when he was a cheresh, knows he was already a cheresh before the Knisa, she doesn't eat truma. But if she was misyabemes to the Yavam, and now she can eat truma when he's miyabma and he's a cheresh, because he's a cheresh meikara. So you have Baal cheresh meikara, means he was already a cheresh before Knisa l'chup. She does not eat truma. But if he only became a cheresh, let's say the Yavam, meikara, so that he was already a cheresh at the time of the Yibum, then when he's miyabim, he's a cheresh, nevertheless she eats truma. The Ika de Amri, now the Gemara offers another take on the machlokas between Rav and Shmuel. And we're talking about a woman who falls for Yibum min ha'erisin. She was only mureses to the late brother, her husband. And an arusa does not eat truma. Is divrei hakol lo ochla. There's no machlokas. Everyone agrees unanimously that the Yevamot cannot eat truma. And when the Yavam takes upon her and implements a bia, but it's a bia grua, then everybody agrees. Even Rav would agree that she doesn't eat from truma dahalo achla b'chay habal, because she hasn't yet achieved and possessed, if you will, the koach, that power and that license to eat truma. And the Yavam doesn't have the power to bring her up to another level through a bia grua. He can't be beyond the Baal. If the Baal, through Eretzin, the late husband was not able to bring her up to Achil's Truma, then certainly he cannot, as a Yava, would be a grua. So what then is the machlokas now, according to the second, which is between Rav and Shmuel? Ki pligi, min hanesuin, she was already a nesua under the late husband, and she already had acquired and possessed the rights to eat truma. And then her husband died, and she stops eating truma because she's a Bas Yisrael and a Su'a L'Kohen. Now the Yavam comes and has a relationship with her called a Bia Grua. Rav Amar Ocheles, Ohavya Havas Achla Meikar, since she already had a chazaka, so to speak, a possession over the rights to eat truma, she doesn't forfeit those possessions. The Yavam, even through Bia Grua, is able to reestablish this kaviyachol, the state of the marriage that existed from the late husband, and he can be machal hatruma. So the Yavam is machal hatruma as, so to speak, stepping into the shoes of the late husband. That's the shita Rab. But Shmuel Omar, Eino Cheles. She can't eat truma. She cannot eat truma because ki Rabbi Rachmana bias shogeg kimezid. When we derive from psukim, as we did earlier, and we said that you don't need kavanas mitzvah in order for the yavam to be kona, and even in a shogeg he thought he was having a relationship with his wife, and so forth and so on, and that's like amazing. And Mazid meaning a bia gemur l'shem yibum. But lidvarim amur b'parsha, according to Shmuel, that's only as far as Yerusha. He steps into his brother's shoes, and he inherits the estate of his brother, and she is p'turim and ayibum. Aval l'chol mili, but for anything else, then we're not going to say that she's ke'ishta l'chol davar. No, she cannot eat truma. So the Gemara asks, what do you mean? I have a contradiction in Shmuel now. Because Omer Rav Nachman Omer Shmuel call Shabal Machil Yava Machil. Shmuel says that if the husband was Machil, like for example in our scenario, in our case where she was Nesua, Yavam, he also could be Machil HaTruma. Even if he comes on her, he has a relationship with her of a Bia Grua. So you see that Shmuel holds that Nafla Liyibum in Nesuin, she eats Truma. Even in the case of Bia Grua. So Gemara answers, Ema, when do we say in Rav Nachman in the name of Shmuel, Kol Bia Shabal Machilba, Yava Machilba, that if the late husband had taken her into the chuppah, and if he was Machil HaTruma, and then we're going to say that the Yavam likewise is Machil HaBetruma, that's only in a case where he had a relationship with the Yavam with the Yevama, Bebia Gemura, Bedas Gemura. Bechol Bia She'ena Baal Machil. Well, for example, if the Baal himself, the deceased, during his lifetime had to be a shogeg with her, without full-fledged das, and that would not make it a valid Nisuin. Nisuin requires das. So he wouldn't have been Konaha with this shogeg situation. Therefore, Eina Yavam Machil Ba. If the Yavam has a relationship with the Yavama of a Bia like that one, meaning the same kind of a Bia of a Shogeg, then that's a Bia Grua. That would not in any way surpass the Bia of the husband in the case where he brought her into the chuppah without das. Like, for example, a kind of a shogeg situation where he wasn't aware of the fact that he's being kona by taking her into the chuppah. So now we have a reconciliation of the sheet of Shmuel. If a Yevama had fallen for Yibum min ha-nitsuin, her original marriage was a full-fledged marriage that culminated in Nitsuin, then Shmuel would say that even a Bia grew like a Bia Shogeg on the part of the Yavam. Just 1 second. Then, because I should say, not even though, because the Yavam had a relationship with her of a Bia Shogeg like a Bia Grua, therefore he's not Machil HaTruma through that Bia. Okay, then. So let's look at Mesve now. We'll Mesve. We have a brisa that seems to contradict Shmuel. Bas Yisrael pikachas shenis arsa lekohen pikeach below hispik lekonsa. So it's between Eretz and chuppah. Ad shenis charesh. So at the time of the Sunni, he was a cheresh, and he's not a bardas. Hence, his kinyan is not a valid kinyan. Eino chelas b'truma. She cannot eat truma because she's not in a suah. She's only in a arusa, and a arusa doesn't eat truma. Mace. Now the Baal Cherish dies after the so-called Knisa L'chuppah. V'naftal lefnei achiv Yavam Cherish. Right, it seems that deafness runs in the family. Did you hear me? So now the Yavam is a Cherish. He has a relationship with her. He's miyabim her. And then it says in the Brisa, to our surprise, Ochelis B'truma, that Bias Yibum doesn't require das. So the kinyan of the Yavam makes her into Ishto Gemura, and the Yavam is a Kohen, and therefore she eats Truma, even though her previous husband, the late Kohen who died did not have the ability to be machil hatruma because he needed to create nesu, which he couldn't do. He was a cherich. Ubazu, in this inyan, yafe koach hayavam mikoach habal. The power of the yavam to generate a right to eat truma or a license to eat truma is greater and exceeds that of the Baal. The Baal was a cherish, couldn't be meichel of truma. The yavam, he's a cherish, and yet he could be meichel of truma. So Gemara asked, Mishlem el Rav, I can understand this brisa very well, according to the Shita of Rav, even though it seems from this brisa that she did not eat truma tachas baila, and nevertheless she eats truma tachas hayavam acheresh, and his bia without das is therefore classified as a bia grua, and Rav holds that if she falls for yibmina erison, and she hadn't yet acquired the license, the rights to eat truma under her husband, she cannot acquire those rights under her yavam bebia grua. Nevertheless, Rav is mataretz kiditaretz meikara. He'll give the answer that he gave before Shmuel, the original answer. Now we're going to add to the brisa that when it says in the brisa that she eats truma tachas hayavam, that's in a case, in a scenario where the Baal Acheresh became a Cheresh after the Knisa. She was eating truma. She was already muchsekes. She had already a chazaka, a possession of Achilles truma, and therefore she eats truma underneath the yavam. And just like if she had fallen for Yibmin and Suin, Rav holds that she eats truma tachas hayavan even if he has a bia grua. El Shmuel, but Shmuel holds that even if she was nafal Yibmin and Suin, meaning even if she had already possessed the rights to eat truma under a Baal, nevertheless she cannot eat truma under the yavam after the Baal's death, because that right of the Achilles truma from the Baal is gone with his death, and now the yavam came and had a relationship with her of a bia grua. Kasha. What are we going to do with this brisa? The brisa says that she can eat truma tachas yavam hacheresh, even though his bia is a bia grua, and this despite the fact that the original cheresh, the Baal Harishon, was not able to bring her into the chuppah, and therefore he couldn't be machal truma kash. Ton Rabbanon Basi Yisrael pikachas. Shenis arsel lekon pikeach, well, hispik lekon tzad shenis charesh, eino cheles. In other words, this is not a valid nesuin that could allow the Kohen Baal to be machil hatruma, because he was a cheresh at the time of the nesuin. He wasn't a bardas. His kinyan is not valid. However, nolad ben, if she had a child, a son, from this Kohen who became a cheresh, then ocheles b'truma. In other words, since her son is a Kohen who eats truma, he would be machil his mother truma. Meis haben, if the son dies, and the Av, the father of this Ben, who's her Baal, is a cheresh, and he's still alive, Rabbi Nosson Omer Ocheles, because since she was eating during the lifetime of her son, because her son was machil her, therefore even with the death of her son, she continues to eat truma because she's married to a Kohen. The fact that he's a cheresh is now irrelevant because it's not the nesuin of the Baal cheresh that generates her achila, but rather it is the Ben. Tachom Omer Beino Cheles. My time of the Rabbi Nosson, Omer Rabba holds Shekvar Ochla. Since when our son was alive, she could eat truma. We allow her to continue to eat truma even after the death of her son. Omer Abaye, Helameata. How far are you going to go with this logic? Bas Yisrael Shenises Lekohen. Umisle. So she was eating truma and her husband died. The Kohen died. Is Techal. We're going to say that she has a chazaka, she's already begun her rights to eat truma b'chai baila. Now she continue eating truma after the death of her husband. That's ridiculous. That's not the law. Hella came in the mislay baal once her husband dies. Pakale kedusha say. In other words, the Isha has no kedusha of Kohen. She's not mechuberes to a Kohen, he died. She cannot eat truma. It's hachinami, says Abaye, says Rabbi, excuse me. We should apply the same logic here when the son dies. Pakar kedushasei shel ben mina. She's no longer connected to the ben who's the Kohen who could be machil her, and therefore she cannot eat truma. So again, we have to understand what's the reasoning of Rabbi Nassan who says that she does eat truma. Ella Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says that the time of Rabbi Nassan that she eats truma is because her husband, who's a Kohen, is Nesua lo. Because so Rabbi Nassan Nisue Cheresh Machilin Bitruma. Rabbi Nassan has a whole new take on the chup of a Cheresh and its ability to generate Nesuin, the Kinyan Nesuin. And we're not sure how far Rabbi Nassan is going with this. Are we talking about a full-fledged Nesua? Or we're just talking about the Gzeira D'Rabbanan that even though Minat Torah of Bas Yisrael eats Truma as an Arusa, she's Kinyan Kaspa, the Rabbanan made a Gzeira that she should not eat Truma until Nesuin. Maybe the Nesuin of a Cheresh is meaningful enough and registers in order to remove that Gzeras Chachamim and give her the status of a quasi Nesua to allow her to eat Truma. Now we have to ask ourselves why that Gzeira D'Rabbanan that prohibits a woman who's an Arusa to eat Truma, why is that lifted with regard to Nesua Cheresh? After all, he wasn't Kona with that chuppah with a Kinyan Nesua. And the answer is that Minat Torah, he adds an interesting point. He says, Sheva Yavo Lahatir Lechol B'Truma Gam Imikad Sheder. He says that the Rabbanon, the Chachamim, let's call it that, they disagree with Rabbi Nassan. They hold Eino Cheles B'Truma, and they insist on this Gzeira, extending it even after Nesui Cheresh. Even though, again, he was Makadosh when he was a Bikeach, but we have a Gzeira that doesn't allow. And we're afraid, according to the Chachamim Rabbi Nassan, that if we allow her to eat Truma, in the case of Nesue Cheresh, then she might come to eat Truma, not she or another woman, even with Kiddushay Cheresh. Now he adds another note. He says, Azai, meaning in a case of Kiddushay Cheresh, Minat Torah lo cheles. On a Deraisa level, she's a Bas Yisrael, she cannot eat Truma. Kevan she'eno ben das. Kiddushin requires das, and he's not a ben das, he's a Cheresh. Rabbi Nassan was matir in Truma Nesue Cheresh because the Kiddushin was when he was a Pikeach. So on a Deraisa level, the Kiddushin was Chal. And Lo Gazrina Nesue Cheresh Hatu Kiddushay Cheresh. We're not afraid that the people might mistakenly think, well, if she can eat Truma after Nesue Cheresh, she can even eat Truma after Kiddushay Cheresh. You know, in my humble opinion, we would advocate here or activate here the principle of Dover Shlo Shchiach, Mil Shlo Shchiach, Lo Gazru Bei Rabbanan. There is, by the way, a shita later on in Masechet Yevamot of Rabbi Eliezer that Cheresh has a das klusha, whereas Rabbanan disagree. They hold that Cheresh ha'ein lo das klal, and that might kick into this whole mafluk. Abaye says to Rabbi Yosef, if the reasoning of Rabbi Nassan to allow it eat truma when her husband is a Kohen, because on a Doraisa level, her husband would be able to be machal truma, and the Gzeira D'Rabbanan doesn't apply. Is nolad la ben lamali. why does the Brisa make a big deal that Rabbi Nosson holds that in event that she had a son there, and then she could eat truma. But according to the time that you just explained now in Rabbi Nosson, she could eat truma based on the das klusha, shall we call it, of Nesuin, of the Cheresh, even if she didn't have a son. And Rav Yosef answers that when the Brisa mentions that she had a son, and therefore she could eat truma, mishum Rabbana. And that was an addition of the Brisa to clarify the sheet of the Rabbanan who disagree with Rabbi Nosson. They hold that Nesui Cheresh is not machil b'truma, and the Brisa being mechadish now that if nolad laben, then even the Chacham Moda, they concede to Rabbi Nosson that she eats truma because of her ben. So Gemara now asks if Rabbi Yosef is correct that Rabbi Nosson disagrees and holds that Nesui Cheresh is machil b'truma v'liflog Rabbi Nosson alayu b'reisha. We learned in the Reisha the Bryce that she doesn't eat truma because at the time of the Nesuin, the Baal was a Cheresh. At this point, Rabbi Nosson should have argued against the Tanakama, against the Chacham, and said that she does eat truma because he was Makadisha when he was still a Pikeah. And the Gemara answers that Rabbi Nosson shaviklu l'Rabbanon ad b'sayim milsayu v'hadar polug. Rabbi Nosson, out of etiquette, allows the Rabbanon to finish their presentation. That Nesui Cheresh ain't a machila b'truma unless nolad laben. And then afterwards, he disagrees with their entire presentation. And he holds that Nesui Cheresh, in a case where the kedusha was a pikeach, is machila b'truma. And he also therefore disagrees on the beginning of what the Rabbanan said, that she can't eat truma before the birth of the son. And as well disagrees with the Softim when they said that if the son dies, then she cannot eat truma. Rabbi Nosson holds no, that she continues to eat truma because she ate truma biglal, because of Baila Harishon, Baila Kohen. And when it says nolad laben, that's only for the Rabbanan. But as far as Rabbi Nosson is concerned, we don't have to introduce the ben at all, because Nesui Cheresh kishekitsha kishu peach machilin b'trumi hachi. The Gemara asks if the reasoning of Rabbi Nosson is that he waited, as we said before, for the Rabbanan to finish up their presentation. Listening, the Bryce should have said Meis Ben Eino Chelas, and that would have been a sentence unto itself. And then Rabbi Nosson could immediately disagree and say Ochelas. But the Bryce says Mes Ben Rabbi Nosson Ochelas Chachamim Eino Chelas. And Rabbi Nosson disagrees with Rabbanon before they got a chance to finish their presentation. It would seem that Rabbi Nosson disagrees only with that din of Meis Ben, and on the Reisha. And the Gemara again ends with Kasha. The Mishnah says, "V'cheina bo'al achas mikol haraya shebetorah chayav," that you chayav whether it's kedarka or shelo kedarka, whether it's ha'ara, Gemar biyom or Amram. Hamil, so this din that we're about to bring. Amalon Rav Sheshes said in his own opinion, his own chidush, Barinu li'ainen, and Rav Sheshes lightened up our eyes with that very ambiguous mission. Mimasnisin. And the raya here is from the Masechet.